And welcome back to National Geographic. We've uncovered TF2 and 2 Metroid games back here under the desk. PSA, be careful when you have a lot of friends on a desk and you're moving it around. And also this around 2008 era snow globe with Nintendo favorites Dr. Andonuts and Link. Well, you know what, Dr. Andonuts, a little infamous with Earthbound endings, Mother 3, you know. There's definitely that argument of he could have stopped. He could have not worked for Porky Minch. So until today, I haven't gotten these cards out since around 2008. And I remember my stepmom getting this for me. Thank you, Michelle. It's really cool. You can basically put whatever picture, like paper frame you want in the snow globe. And this is from my Nintendo TCG. Talk about... You know, I kind of time capsuled it a bit. I just kind of wanted to put something in there. But, you know, I encourage people out there, you know, Nintendo TCG is a thing that I've been working on, well, since 6th grade. Actually, technically 5th grade. My first cards were on MS Paint, and they're saved. They're, like, saved in deep computer storage. Thankfully, that got transferred over. And I definitely am a big fan of encouraging people to be creative in general. I think a lot of that can stem from what inspires you. So Nintendo TCG, you know, I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And I was about to start playing Pokemon TCG. I collected since base set, but you know, those kind of competitive card games helped me a lot. I loved card games. I love the way you can play different monsters and characters. You can, you know, build a deck and have strategy around that, which I think is awesome. So for people out there that love music, movies, shows, board games, card games, video games, what inspires you can combine with understanding what makes for relative competency. Like, for example, you know, the context that these cards were made in 2006, 2007, I think is important because I can reflect upon the ambition there that I had. Obviously, there's a lot of typos. There's, you know, they're not professionally that well made, but the ambition is important, the starting point. I think some people are afraid to start putting the paint on the canvas, but if you're inspired to make those type of things and art in general, start today. I've talked about Star Wars in the past. I talked about it last week, and how the scene where Luke Skywalker comes back in Mandalorian Season 2 was incredible. So much praise. And it was such a good move from Dave Filoni to put him and Boba Fett, Ahsoka in Season 2, and people just loved it. It was great all around, and I'm a big fan of seeing beloved characters respected and returning. There has been a vocal minority, though, from time to time, and whether they want it for attention or they want to be contrarian, they're definitely, I've seen every now and then people that say, oh, here we go, another nostalgic character, corporate nostalgia, they're just trying to get your money. When I think what goes back to artistic drive, I think people don't comprehend here that someone like Luke is a symbol of hope. You know, that's a big part of the original trilogy, A New Hope, Return of the Jedi, right? He was able to bounce back once the Empire Strikes Back type stuff, you know, never giving up. So seeing Luke save a lot of the main characters in The Mandalorian was awesome. It was artistically sound and competent. So I think there's a divide here that people need to understand. Yes, there are times where, you know, corporations will bring back a beloved character to make money, but more so, if it's artistically sound, take my money. And video games are a big part of this. My username started over 20 years ago, and I've been hoping to see Spire from Metroid show up in a video game again. He showed up in Smash Bros. Brawl, but that's it. He hasn't showed up in any other video game. And this isn't a complaint. I'm not going to be negative about it. I would just love to see him. I think the Metroid Prime Hunters are the #1 most underutilized characters in any form of media. They're so cool. There was a lot of effort put into them to be distinct parallels to Samus Aran. I think that's awesome. They could have just made 6 alternate colors to Samus and called it a day with the Nintendo funding, but they didn't. And so I think there is an awesome feeling that people have when they love a character and they see them return. But there's obviously, there's a form of awareness, I think, that is important to understand, that hopefully it's not a corporation just wanting your money. Obviously, people work. Making money is important to survive. So, I think the win-win situation here is Metroid Prime Hunters 2 and all the Prime Hunters come back. Wow, beloved characters coming back, here's my money. In the Legend of Zelda series, they recently brought back the Deku Scrubs in Echoes of Wisdom. Love it so much, and looks like a lot of other people do too. Deku Scrubs are my favorite, just general race in the Legend of Zelda. My favorite, just society. My favorite species. The Deku royal family are my favorite characters. It's so much fun to see the Deku Palace and listen to the music. So to hear a remix of that come back and then Deku Scrubs come back, it's awesome. Just a really cool way that you can tell the designers were doing their homework. I think that's the ironic part, is some people say, oh, this character came back, here we go, lazy shilling to the fans. It's like, no, often it feels like they're doing their homework. They didn't have to do that. I just saw the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and they did their homework, not just for Star Fox, but I was telling my friends on the way out of the theater that the ticket paid for itself by just having the Super Mario Bros. 2 bosses and enemies in there. I'm not counting like Shy Guys, Bob-ombs, and Pokeplants because they've been in a lot of games, which good for them. That's awesome. But Wart, Mouser, Birdo's also been in a lot of games, but she's also always been one of my most favorite Mario Universe characters. Claw Grip, the Ninjas. Seeing those characters again, especially Wart and Mouser and Claw Grip, which have not been in any Mario game since Super Mario Bros. 2. In fact, ironically, Wart was in a Zelda game first to get his 3D model before a Mario game. But that ticket paid for itself with that alone. That was awesome. And I could tell they did their homework. They're like, oh, this is the second Mario movie. Hey, what did happen in Mario 2? I'm sure a conversation like that happened. And they saw all these cool, distinct bosses. I appreciate it. Well, I don't agree with, obviously some of the pricing on the Switch 2 and kind of the games in general with the pricing. I did take a look at Donkey Kong Bonanza, and, it's been quite a few weeks now, but if you're planning to play the game, I'm about to spoil it. So if you are playing it right now, in the next 5 seconds, I'm going to say another of my favorite Mario Universe characters that had involvement here. And that's King K. Rool. I love seeing him again. I love the homework they did with his music themes. And again, people praised it. And you're going to have people every now and then say, oh, nostalgia pandering, here we go. But to me, when you make a cool character, you don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time. I'm not against new characters at all, but I feel like in video games, it should be further praised when people go back and say, wow, we had a really good wheel here. Oh, people like seeing this wheel spin. Well, why don't we add some engine? Why don't we add an engine around it, or maybe a new coat of paint, but make sure the wheel is still the wheel here. I think there's so much opportunities for that. And hopefully, again, those companies aren't really listening to, the anger-filled, oh, here we go, King K. Rool, nostalgia pandering, but rather it's like, wow, the games he was in was fun, people like this character, and do you know how, we lucked out that as a company, as Nintendo, we have all these fan favorites that people love seeing. It takes a long time for companies to get mascots for people to love. Obviously, there's a difference between a corporate mascot of trying to sell a product and then a mascot that happens to come from something that's artistically driven. Like Mario, obviously, is Nintendo's mascot, but Mario came from the ambition of making a game like Donkey Kong, and I think that's really cool. I think it's really cool that we are one Google search away from learning more about Deku Scrubs, learning more about Spire, learning more about King K. Rool. And I hope that all their wiki pages get added to in the next decade. It's awesome to see those characters return. Playing Street Fighter, it's awesome to see characters come back from the series. I think that's awesome. And again, it shows that they are doing their homework, but they're also introducing really cool new characters like Marisa and Manon in Street Fighter 6. I think that's awesome that there's a nice blend of that. And they understand that we love these characters. it's really cool that Street Fighter is keeping the train rolling of all the 8 World Warriors being playable characters. They obviously didn't do that in Street Fighter 3. That was its own kind of marketing disaster at first, but it ended up at the end, Street Fighter 3 ended up being a pretty beloved game, especially with Third Strike. Regardless, I would have loved all the World Warriors to be playable in there, and I think Capcom retroactively is like, yeah, we're never going to make that mistake again. So yeah, Street Fighter 6, seeing all 8 of them playable was awesome. And it's so important maintaining that. And you know, Pokemon, hopefully, I'm hoping that maybe it'll take some new blood in there, but I hope that they understand that it's true. Every Pokemon is someone's favorite out there, so I hope the mainline games bring back the national decks. You know, I think that's so important. Again, and some people think that national decks means, oh, national decks for the adventure. Like, basically, almost every adventure doesn't have the national decks. It's when you beat the game, you have access to every Pokemon. I think that's important. And Pokemon is an IP powerhouse. Again, one mascot alone is incredible to have as a company that people love. If you have one character you drew and people will pay you money for that character to be in merchandising, for games, people will buy video games because a character is in that game. You know, Terry Bogard and Mai were in Street Fighter 6, and definitely there were King of Fighter and Fatal Fury fans that bought Street Fighter 6 because of that. So now in Pokemon's case, you can just have one Pokemon as a plushie, Venusaur, Charizard, or Blastoise, and they can make a ton of money, or in the cards. And so, to me, if I was in charge of Pokemon, I'm like, guys, it's not hard to keep every Pokemon in the game, you know, at least as like holders in the Pokedex that someone could trade or get later. So let's keep that around. I think that's important. And, you know, shout outs to the Zelda team for being able to go back and do pretty nice homework on the series. And, you know, I should say this, though. You know, it is about being delicate and careful when bringing back a character. So bringing back Spire, I do think Spire could have popped up quite a few times. That's also more of Nintendo not really making a lot of Metroid games until Samus Returns came out in the mid-2010s. And that's its own can of worms, is Nintendo has these beloved IPs, especially the sci-fi ones that didn't get a lot of games after the 2000s. F-Zero, Star Fox, Metroid. I always put Star Tropics in there too. I think Star Tropics could easily have more games. But looking like Fox did well in the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Hopefully there's a Star Fox movie in the next few years. Metroid is doing pretty well, and I'm hoping that F-Zero gets a new game. We did get F-Zero 99, but again, there's a lot of people that love Samus, Fox, Falcon, and a lot of characters in that series. For me, my favorites of each of those are, you know, Spire, Peppy Hair, and Pico. And I just like to see those characters more. It's crazy how far a favorite character can go for a company, and people would love to buy more toys and shirts. My dad made comments, like he'll make comments every now and then. Every now and then we'll go to a store and he'll see all the Nintendo and Sonic merchandise, and he's like, man, kid, you would have gone crazy for these, because he basically brought up how hard it was in the late 90s and the 2000s to find merchandise like that. But it looks like those, you know, Nintendo and Sega have caught on more and more. And I will say, Sega's been killing it. Sega, when it comes to bringing back fan favorites, I think Sonic might actually be the best IP for this right now. Like, they're dominating, and they've been dominating since. Honestly, they never lost their touch. I'm looking through the timeline, and you know, it's the fact that Sonic Heroes came out in the early 2000s, and it brought back Vector, Espio, and Charmy from Knuckles Chaotix. It brought back Metal Sonic as the secret big bad from Sonic CD, Cream the Rabbit from Sonic Advance 2, Big the Cat from Sonic Adventure. You know, you look at all the team layouts and all the games they come from. E123 Omega, my favorite Sonic character. He's from Sonic Heroes, but he represents the E series from Sonic Adventure 1. That's homework. That is, they are, and they're still doing it now. They bring back fan favorites all the time, and it's really cool to see characters like Bean the Dynamite, Bark the Polar Bear, Knack the Weasel show up, or how much they're showing like the Babylon Rogues in content. And for people that don't play a lot of Sonic, I just basically mentioned a lot of characters that might have only been in a few games, but they keep showing up in more games and or comics and just official forms of media. And that's awesome. That needs to be praised more. I really like that a lot. And I think Sega is understanding that kind of down-to-earth structure that, wow, out of all of our main Sonic characters, they're a favorite for someone out there. And they've been striking a pretty good balance in showing those characters. Obviously, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are going to be shown kind of the most overall, along with Dr. Eggman. But I like those characters too. And I think there really is a nice balance. In fact, for Sonic, they have, what's considered the Big Six for marketing, which are often the Big Six most popular characters. The ones I just said, along with Amy and Shadow. But even with that, it's not like their marketing is just the Big Six. They will make toys for a lot of the other characters, new toys too. And I always sit there and be like, wow, Nintendo could do this. Like, Nintendo could do this more, and I think that would be cool. So I'm hopeful in the future we see some nice fan favorites from so many Nintendo IPs, and also just IPs in general when it comes across video games. I didn't even grow up playing much PlayStation because I never owned it, but I know people want a new Sly Cooper, they want a new Jak and Daxter, they want a new Ratchet and Clank. I'm hoping for them too, the fans that want that. People are wanting to give money for these great IPs you set up. So honestly, when you're worried about impressing stockholders, sometimes take that risk. An ironic risk with characters that are so beloved. I'm sure it'll work out well if you have competency in mind. I think that's the end of it, is handling it with care. Being able to understand, hey, this is we're bringing back Sly Cooper. What made these games good? Not just what someone, those angry people want. Like, oh, you brought back Sly Cooper, you just want money. To fight against that, you bring him back and respect what made that series great. It takes effort, but that effort often pays off. Again, I'm rooting for those characters, and here's to seeing so many of these beloved characters show up in the next decade. I love Mondays.